Today I'm going to share my prison chaplaincy ministry and share some of the Bible passages with you. So back when I was a child, I grew up in a Seventh-day Adventist family, and my parents went to a local prison. Even my father, he made a portable baptism tank which was stored in our property, and as a child I remember those interactions with some of the inmates. When they were paroled out, they were visiting our house. So later on, when I graduated from high school, I became a missionary for a year, then studied theology in seminary, and became a pastor. So I served as a pastor for 3.5 years, and in 2011, I decided to pursue a healthcare chaplaincy residency. It's also called as a clinical pastoral education. And while I was doing that residency, one of the church members approached me and asked me to visit her son, who ended up being in a county jail. So I visited him multiple times, and after those visits, I received a calling from the Lord to do this ministry. So I applied for a job and was hired by one of the state prisons. And within the last over 7 years, I've been doing this ministry full-time. I look at some of the statistics and found that according to 2017, in the United States, we have 93.2% of male individuals who are incarcerated and only 6.8 females, which tells us that male individuals, they're more riskier in life, and they tend to end up being in prison more often than females. And also, some of the statistics from the Bible, Bible has 125 times the word prison mentioned there, and none of them relates to a female. So all the stories in Bible related to the male individuals. So 59 passages or places written in the Old Testament and 66 in the New Testament. We're not going to discuss all 125 today, but I would like to read one passage, the very first one, in the book of Genesis, chapter 39, and verses 19 through 21. It's Genesis, chapter 39, and verses 19 through 21. It's the full story about Joseph. It's written actually from chapters 39 through 41, but we'll only read that small passage. So it was when his master heard the words which his wife spoke to him, saying, "Your servant did to me after this manner," that his angels was aroused. Then Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined, and he was there in the prison. So the very first verse in this passage tells us that even in the very far Egypt, way back then, they had different levels of security. They had different types of prisons. In this particular case, it was a prison where the king's prisoners were confined. And Joseph ended up being in one of these type of prisons. And then verse 21, it tells us, but the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy, and he gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. I usually read this passage before from the perspective of an inmate, Joseph as an inmate. But today I would like to read it from the perspective of a chaplain. So when chaplains come to the prison, they also have to conduct a professional manner with their prison authority in order to get the favor from them to conduct this ministry. So during my personal counseling with inmates, some of the inmates share with me their frustration or some of the miscommunication which they have with their custody, with correctional officers. And I encourage them to stay connected with the Lord, pray about those correctional officers. And I've heard a number of stories when inmates' relationship with their custody were improved. So the next verse 22, it says, "And the keeper of the prison committed or delegated to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. So as a chaplain, it's also important to delegate our ministry. So we're not doing everything our own, but we can collaborate or co-minister with volunteers, with inmates who are there 24/7, and with other religious organizations. For example, in our institution, we have a program called Angel Tree. Angel Tree organization is a Christian-based group which donates toys for inmates or children or grandchildren, and every year we collaborate with them. We collect, we pass on applications for the inmates. They fill them out with information of their children or grandchildren, and we do the logistics and to make sure that their children or grandchildren receive those toys for the Christmas presents while their parents and grandparents are in the prison. So important to collaborate also with volunteers. We have multiple volunteers who come to the institution and they conduct Bible studies or weekly religious services. Delegated ministry is also important when we do it, when we involve the inmates to be part of the service. During the week, they meet every morning. For example, in my institution, every morning they meet together, say prayers, and sermonettes, and share their testimonies. Every quarter, we have baptism time when inmates, whoever were going through the Bible studies, they come and participate. So verse 23 in this passage, it says, "The keeper of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and whatever he did, the Lord made it prosper." Sometimes when we do the ministry, we think, how can I be prosperous in my ministry in the prison? But the verse here tells us that the Lord was with Joseph, and as a result, the Lord made whatever Joseph did, made it prosperous. Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 5 through 8 also mentions this principle in his letter to the church in Corinth. He says, who then is Paul and who is Apollos, but ministers through whom you believed, as the Lord gave to each one. I planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. So then neither he who plants is anything, nor he who waters, but God who gives the increase. Now he who plants and he who waters are one, and each one will receive his own reward according to his own labor. So both Joseph's story and Paul, they tell us that it's important to remember that we are the planters. We are the ones who do our part, and the Lord will do that prosper. The Lord will increase. Our main verse of our chaplaincy congress is written in the book of Micah, chapter 6, verse 8. It says, "He who shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord requires of you, but to do justly, to love mercy, and walk humbly with your Lord." It's important to act justly when we are at the correctional institution. So each correctional institution follows policies and procedures, and we have to adhere to them. We have to follow them. If we disobey them, if we fail them, chaplains can even be investigated for not following the procedures and even lose that opportunity to minister. Inmates often try to ask favors for a chaplain to bring something to the institution or to call their family members, which is here in the United States, it's not permitted. And if chaplain goes towards that direction, they might lose that opportunity. That's why in book of Micah, the first principle is to act justly, to follow policies and all procedures. which each institution has. So the next one is love and mercy. Despite what inmates did in their life, they still need to have that love and mercy in their life, despite of their age, despite the reason why they ended up being in prison. And as a chaplains, we bring that God's love and God's mercy to them. And then lastly, Prophet Micah tells us that we need to walk humbly. We have a title as a chaplains, but we need to remember that we are the sons and daughters of God. We're the same individuals, we're the same sinful people who are ministering to others. And it's important to remember to walk humbly with our God and with those whom we are ministering. And the last passage, it's written in the book of Matthew, chapter 25, and verses 36 and 40. It's a well-known verse written by Matthew, and it was said by Jesus Christ. And Jesus said, "I was in prison, and you came to me." Obviously, inmates cannot come to our churches in the streets, but as a result, we have to come to their institutions and do the ministry. And Jesus said, "I say to you, as much as you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me." Remember, whatever you do in your ministry, do it as for the Lord, and He will give you a favor inside of the correctional leadership and as well as in the side of the inmates. May God bless your ministry.